What's good, everybody? So today I'm going to show you guys every single rare pattern in CS2. There's hundreds of skins, so if you're new to the game, it's very confusing about what a rare pattern is or what it looks like. I'm going to show you guys every single one, explain it, tell you what to look for, and tomorrow we're going to cover the rare knife patterns as well. So with that being said, guys, let's get right into the pistols. Starting with the Emerald Jormungandr. So there's rare patterns where the serpent head shows up. Most patterns don't have this, but this one right here, pattern 822, has it on the handle. There's different variations. You can get it on the hammer, the back of the gun, the slide, but personally my favorite is going to be the one on the handle. Next up is the Moonrise. Pretty much everybody knows about it, but if you don't know for some reason, you can get a little star on the slide catch on the Glock. Super cheap to get, pretty much market price. Adds a little bit of, detail to the gun. It's nice. It's a nice little cheap pattern that you can get. I'm sure everybody appreciates it. On the Nuclear Garden, you can get patterns where there's a bunch of skulls on the slide. So for example, this one right here, pattern 697, has a total of 6 skulls on the slide. The more skulls and the more centered they are, the better the pattern. And some patterns even have a skull on the back. This one kind of has it here, but like I said, the main feature here is going to be having a bunch of skulls lined up, and the more the better. Next up, we have the Glock Reactor, and this one is going to be the teeth pattern. Now you can see right here, the reactive symbols kind of line up to make like a mouth, basically, with sharp teeth. It's pretty rare. Only a few select handful of patterns have it. Some patterns will have like half of the teeth, but it's not going to be centered. The best patterns, for example, 281, will have it centered and in the middle of the gun. Next up is the Glock Grinder, and this is pattern 916. It's considered a full black pattern, and there's a lot of them that vary depending on how much black, but basically one of the cleanest rare patterns in the game, where the full slide is black with different colors. Some have yellow and orange, some have red and green. It really depends on the pattern, but one of my favorites and like the best patterns are quite expensive, but you can find some that are pretty cheap, around $2-3, that will have like majority of the slide full black. Next up, we have the Glock High Beam. Now this pattern right here is considered the full blue pattern, where the spirals basically cover the entire slide. It's a nice blend of dark blue and then light blue. This right here is pattern 550. There's only a few of them, and they're not that expensive, but they are quite rare. Nice touch on like a pretty popular skin that is quite cheap as well. Next up, we have the Glock Red Tire, and this is pattern 620. Now this one right here is called the Rush B pattern because it has the rush spelling up front on the tire, and then tire treads in the back with like the little B symbol at the back near the handle. Pretty cool pattern. Not a lot of people know about it. It doesn't make a huge difference between other patterns, but it's a cool niche one that people do like. Moving on to the 5.7, we have Berries and Cherries. Now, there's 2 rare patterns. This is called the Max Cherry pattern, where 95% of the slide, 90 to 95%, is full red. So this is pattern 60. And for the Max Berry pattern, it's gonna be 73. So this is the Max Berry pattern. You can kind of pick, but remember, this is quite an expensive skin. It's like $70. So the rare patterns will add some value to the actual, skin itself. Pretty cool though, nice for crafts, and nice to, polar opposites. I'm sure you guys probably know this one, the 5.7 Case Horn Blue Gem. This is pattern 278, the #1 pattern. Extremely expensive, full blue, but keep in mind, you can kind of emulate this pattern with the new heat-treated skins that we got on the 5.7. Once again, classic. Pretty much everybody knows about this one. Alright, so next up we have the Kami 909. This is infamous. Everybody pretty much knows about it. Okay, I don't have to explain this pattern. You can see it on the back, and there are 2 more other patterns that you can get like this that are also extremely expensive. You guys would not believe how expensive a 909 factory new Kami is. It is absurd. Alright, next up we have the Neon Kimono from the Rising Sun collection. One of my favorite rare patterns. So we have Max Neon and then Max White. This is Max Neon, pattern 452. You guys can see the entire slide is going to be like this very bright yellowish neon color. It looks really good. The pattern lines up really well. And for the Max White pattern, it's going to be 442. So this is what a Max White pattern looks like. You see, it's still going to have some of that neon towards the bottom and the back of the slide, but for the most part, it's full white. It looks nice. And once again, the most white pattern that you can get with the skin. Next up, we have the P250 Crimson Kimono. This is the Max Red slide pattern. As you can see, the entire slide has this red kimono pattern that's vibrant and covers the entirety of the slide, while the handle is full like gray. It looks really nice, especially when you just play with it in game. There's a lot of patterns that have like a full red slide, but like I mentioned, pattern 20 is going to have the most red that you can get. Next up, we have the P250 Nevermore. Now this pattern, basically what you want to look for is centered ravens on the gun. pattern 73 right here has the Raven directly in the back. You see the wings, you see the beak, the entire Raven is visible, and there's a ton of pattern variation. You definitely have to check the guide for this, but there's all sorts of patterns where double Raven, single Raven, handle Raven, the slide Raven. There's a ton of options. Typically, they're not that expensive, and they do make the skin look way better because usually it's just going to be red with like parts of the Raven, but centered ones are exceptionally nice. Onto the Bengal Tiger, there's going to be two rare patterns, okay? This is going to be obviously the max orange pattern where there's 90% orange and then 10% white, and if you want the opposite, and then pattern 34 is going to be the max white pattern where you see the colors flip-flopped, the entire top side of the gun is full white. It's personally my favorite because I prefer, the cleaner skins, and it looks very, very different when you actually play with it in game. Next up, we have the Tech 9 Ice Cap, and this is the max blue pattern. As you can see, the entire barrel is full blue. It looks really nice. There's no gradient, and this pattern 261 is the #1 pattern, but there's a ton of them, and you can get them super cheap. You might even snipe this pattern in particular, for very cheap off the market. It makes a big difference in the skin. I think it's a great upgrade and very nice for full blue inventories. Next up, we have the Tech 9 Sandstorm, and as you can see, this is a max purple pattern. This is pattern 328, where nearly the whole gun is covered in purple. Looks really nice. It's like a matte purple color, great for crafting. Definitely makes a big difference compared to the stock patterns, and one definitely worth checking out, but they do require some overpay. All right, let's talk about the Amber Fade. Now, this is going to apply to every single Amber Fade in the game. They work exactly like Fade skins, where there's 80% and then 100% max Fade. Okay, so 100% max Fade is going to be pattern 763. It's the exact same one as the Fade patterns, where there's 100%. It's going to be applied differently on every gun. For example, like the Galil, it's going to have the green towards the tip. That shows up on something like a Mac 10. It's just going to be full yellow and orange, but the main number that you're looking for is 763 for that 100% Fade. And that's going to apply to every single skin with the Fade pattern. Correction, Amber Fade pattern. All right, next up, we have one of the craziest pattern-based skins in the game, the P2000 Acid Etched. Now, this skin, you have to check the pattern guide for it because there is a bazillion, rare patterns on this skin. My favorite being the 4-leaf clover in the back. As you can see on the back of the gun towards the bottom, the 4-leaf clover is sitting there. This is pattern 326. I actually got this myself for like $2 or something, super cheap, but there's also like a ridiculous amount of other patterns where you can get like the 4-leaf clover trinket. You can get like different slide colors from orange to pink to purple to blue. There's just a ridiculous amount. Definitely check the pattern guide on this. This is like an entire video in itself on how many rare patterns this skin has. Moving on, this is quite cheap. This is the CZ75 Max Cyan pattern. As you can see, the entire slide, the hammer, the slide catch, and the actual trigger all have the cyan color. It looks really nice, great for combos with like the overprints. And this is pattern 411, but you can find plenty of patterns that will have this like full cyan slide. Not exactly like 100% like this pattern, but they're gonna look very similar. Now I'm gonna show you guys two examples of fades. So for the Amber Fade, alright, pattern 763, you see we get the nice yellow color in the back, then the orange, then the green. You see the full spectral fade on it. And then once we switch over to the fades, and here we're going to have the R8 fade equivalent. Now, once again, this is pattern 763, 100% fade. And you can notice that the fades actually look very similar. Instead of the orange, we're going to have the purple, then the pink, then the yellow. And this, like I said, applies to every single gun in the game. It does work a little bit different on, knives, but I will explain that in the next video that I do. Alright, next up, we're moving on to the heavies. And I quickly want to mention, I am not going to be covering like super schizo patterns, like the Bugs Bunny, the Mario pattern, and the Among Us, all of that stuff. That's not like official rare patterns. So if you guys want me to cover it in a separate video, let me know in the comments down below. But this video is specifically for like official patterns that have, exact rare number ones. So this is the Elegant Vines, pattern 827, and as you can see, it's got the rose in the back. There's different like locations where the rose can appear. This is probably considered the best one because, you get a nice gradient of purple and then the rose towards the back, very visible. Like I said, super sleeper pick. You can actually get this skin for like $2 in souvenir and get the rare pattern that most people don't care for. Really nice. And like I said before, there is other rare patterns where we have different orientations of the rose. Alright, for the XOXO, I will definitely recommend either watch one of my videos where I covered, rare patterns in depth, because XOXO has a tremendous amount of rare patterns. From berries and cherries to smoothie to max pink to skulls to writing, there's just a ridiculous amount of them. This right here is pattern 443, probably the most popular rare pattern on this skin. It's going to be a full back, full pink color on the back of the gun. This is probably the most well-known one, considered the pink mesh pattern. But like I said, if you're interested in rare patterns on this skin, definitely check out the guide or a video on it, because there's just too many to cover in one segment. Next up, we have one of the most popular rare patterns. This is the Blue Leaf XM10 Seasons. I personally own this myself, got it for super cheap, and there's different variations of, the patterns you can get on this. The rare one is where you get the blue leaf towards the front of the gun. There's some that have the blue leaf kind of showing, which is a quote-unquote fake spectral fade, and then the ones where you see all three shades of blue on the blue leaf. So here you can see, the light blue, the darker blue, and then the really dark blue. That is considered a full spectral fade. There's different seasons that you can get with this skin. It's a really cool skin in general, but not that expensive, and obviously I would say worth getting if you get it for $4 to $5. Super cheap skin. Next up, we have the Ziggy, which operates very similar to the XOXO, but here we really have one primary rare pattern. It's going to be pattern 703, and it's going to be considered the max purple pattern, similar to the pink with the XOXO. Here we have purple in the back. It's not as crazy and pattern based as XOXO, for example, so I call it kind of like the XOXO minus or whatever, but you do have this pretty nice geometric pattern where you get full purple in the back. Pretty simple skin, not much to cover, so let's move on. For the Nova, we have the Windblown, and this pattern is really, really cool. So this is called the bird pattern, where as you can see towards the barrel, you see the bird up front. Now, when you get the bird all the way up front, you basically get the entire image that the art has to offer on this gun. You get the dandelions, you get them floating away, you get the sky, and then the bird towards the front. There's a lot of patterns that have, the bird towards the front, but some of them look a little bit better than others. It's a super cheap rare pattern to get, more of a collector niche thing, but it's still definitely worth mentioning, and in my opinion is really cool. I own one myself. Alright, next up we have the Max 7 sonar, and this skin does actually have rare patterns. So this pattern 412 right here actually has a perfect layout where the entire top part of the gun has blue, black, blue, black, blue, black, perfectly, horizontally across the gun on top. It is so much better than normal patterns. You guys should definitely compare a normal sonar pattern to this one. This one looks so much better, and you can easily snipe it for super cheap because there's a ton of them, and most people do not care about Mag 7 sonar, so definitely one to look out for. Another example of the pattern 763 on an amber fade is going to be the sawed off. So you see we get the orange, we get the yellow and the green. We see all three colors. Once again, it's going to be the same pattern 763 for 100% fades on every single amber fade. Alright, next up we have the sawed off brake light, and this is considered the hot rod pattern. One of my favorites, and basically what it does is pattern 29 will have all of the white lines that we typically see on this skin get moved all the way to the front or the back, so most of the actual gun has a anodized red finish, very similar to a hot rod. It's basically almost like a hot rod, if you ignore the little white lines on it. It's basically a hot rod skin, and it looks really nice. Most people do know about it, so it is quite expensive for overpay, but it just looks so clean, and it's perfect for crafting. Alright, before we move on to the SMGs, just want to let y'all know, if you guys want to get some skins for yourself, definitely check out today's sponsor, which is SkinSwap. SkinSwap is a CS2 marketplace where you can buy, sell, and trade skins with great reviews on Trustpilot. It's an easy way to swap your old skins for new ones or cash them out, and you always get a 40% deposit bonus. They offer a huge selection of skins to pick from and even daily giveaways. So if you want to try it out, you can use my link in the description for a free CS item. First up, we have the MP9 Mount Fuji. I personally own one myself. This is pattern 441, and this is the triple sun pattern. Now, you can basically have patterns where the actual mountain moves all the way to the right, and you're gonna have the sun, all the way at the back. And then when you look at the back of the gun, another sun appears on the back side of the gun that you see when you actually play with it. And then when we inspect, you can't really see, but the back side also has a third sun on it. So that's why it's considered the triple sun pattern. Most people don't really care about this pattern too much, so you can get it for pretty cheap. There you go. You can see right there the triple sun layout. It's pretty cool. Like I said, I own one myself, and once again, super niche pattern, but there's not that many of them in the game. Now, I wanted to show the MAC-10 fade for a specific reason. So remember how for most guns, when you have 100% fade pattern 763, you typically see all three colors. Well, with the MAC-10, the way the pattern is laid out, you basically get a bunch of purple, a little bit of pink, and then a tiny bit of orange. The MAC-10, in my opinion, doesn't have great fade patterns because the way the pattern sheet lays out, it basically covers half of your gun in purple. If you like collecting 100% fade patterns, 763 is your go-to with this gun, but I just wanted to show pattern difference between something like this and a Galil. Alright, so the number one blue gem pattern on the MAC-10 is a bit subjective. Some people view it differently. In my opinion, this is pattern 667. I think it's one of the best ones where you typically get full blue on the actual top part of the gun and a little bit of blue in different locations depending on pattern. Some patterns will have just like the blue top and then no blue at the bottom, but it really depends on the pattern. If you're interested, check out a guide for it. But like I said, I have to mention it because it is technically a rare pattern. One of my absolute favorite rare patterns is the Last Dive MAC-10. This is pattern 509. I've mentioned it plenty before, but this is the best position where you get a bit of everything in the artwork. So we get the skull in the back, the serpent coming out of the mouth, perfect placement on the skull, the serpent, and you get to see the, the submarine dude, the diver, whatever they're called, you know what I'm saying? Plus you get the seashell up front. So you get literally every single part of the artwork on it and in the optimal positions. This is pattern 509. I've accidentally made this skin go up in price, which is sad because I kind of wanted one, but I think it looks so good. And there are a few other patterns that you can get, like the centered tree and all sorts of stuff. If you're interested, definitely check out the pattern guide for this skin. All right, the one exception to the fades is going to be the MP7. Instead of pattern 763, it's actually 80, and here it's going to be full purple for like 70% of the gun, and then pink. You barely see any orange, and it's a weird exception, but it is technically the 100% fade on this gun, and it's very different to, the other skins that I've shown before. Just for reference, here's the UMP45 fade pattern 763, 100% fade. You see how we have a little bit of purple, a lot of pink, and a lot of yellow. It's very different to the one that we just looked at before, and this is what 99% of other fade guns look like. All right, and here is my favorite rare pattern in the game, the Minotaur's Labyrinth Minotaur pattern. Now, the pattern sheet basically is a massive maze, and in the middle of the pattern sheet, you have a little Minotaur in the middle. This is, in my opinion, the best position you can get him. Some people consider, the spot over the magazine to be the best one, or towards the back. I think the position with the Minotaur that's centered and in the middle of the gun is the best one. This is pattern 9. There's a ton of patterns that do have this Minotaur on it, and I absolutely love the, the lore behind it and the design of the actual pattern itself. I think it looks really cool. I've been looking to get one myself, and I don't know, something about it is just so cool to me. Next up, we have the UMP45 Moonrise. Now, there's one big difference between the Glock and the UMP. This one actually has two spots where you can get the rare star pattern. This one right here that I'm showing is pattern 668. It has the star towards the back. Very visible. I prefer it over here, but you can also get it at the front in the same area, like horizontally, but it's going to be at the front of the gun. You can pick. There's a ton of patterns that have these rare star patterns, and both visible in game, so super cheap as well. Next up, we have the MP5 Lab Rats. Now, I remember this skin caused so much drama back then in terms of like market manipulation and investing, but I will show the rare pattern 952, and it's considered the Red Mama pattern, where you can see on the handguard a big massive red rat in the middle. It's kind of upside down. You can't get it right side up. There is a few other rare patterns that you can get, but this is like the main one. I own it myself. I got it for like cents. It was super cheap, okay? There's zero overpay for this skin, okay? There's a bazillion of them, and I do actually like how this rare pattern looks. It's very visible when you actually play with it and inspect it. It's, in your face, big red rat. What else can you ask for? Alright, next up we have the most popular pattern in the game, the 661 AKK Sarn. Okay, everybody knows the blue gem, the scar pattern. I don't think I have to elaborate. There's like 15 through 18 more tier 1 patterns that are full blue. This is the best one. Everybody knows about it. Now for the AWP, Something really interesting on the fade is that instead of pattern 763 being 100% fade, it's actually 412, and 412 is also the 100% fade on the Karambit and the Talon. So it's kind of flip-flopped for, normal knives and then Karambit's Talons, and then same thing with the AWP where the 80% fade on normal guns is actually the 100% fade on the AWP. So this is pattern 412, we get both the orange, the pink, and the purple, and so 80% fade is going to be the inverse for this AWP. It's going to be 763, that's the 80% fade. Really cool, how the pattern sheets work for these skins, but the AWP fade is an exception. Next up we have the AWP Electric Hive. Now there's two distinct rare patterns. The first one is pattern 273. This is the blue hive where you can see, a blue line going across the whole gun. It's a perfectly, horizontal. And the other one is going to be the orange hive. Now, right here, you can see basically the entire gun has a little bit of purple in the background, but mostly orange covering the entire gun. This pattern does look better to me, in my opinion. It pops more, but you have two options with it. This is pattern 253 and great for crafting. Very, very distinct in how it looks. Next up, we have the AWP Silk Tiger. Now, this I covered extensively in a separate video, so I will cover it briefly. There's a ton of rare patterns. We have the tiger facing down, the yin yang, the white tiger, the eating screw, eye of the tiger. There's a ton of them. I would like to showcase the jawbreaker pattern. So this is 743, and basically when you inspect it, the actual tiger near your backhand lines up with the trigger, so when you shoot the gun, you're basically breaking its jaw. It's a really cool detail, but like I said, I would recommend checking out my other video where I go cover this skin, all of the rare patterns in depth. There's a ton of them, and this skin is way more nuanced than most people, assume it is. Next up, we have the AWP Paw. Very, very popular rare pattern. This is pattern 420, the Zaza cat. Most people know about it. You have, the stoner cat right above the mag in the center position. I would like to showcase two other patterns that are really nice on here. The next one is pattern 41, and it's considered the golden cat pattern. I prefer this over the other one because if you look, the golden cat actually has a shine to it. The most of the skin is like a bit of a matte color, but the golden cat actually is like shiny in different lighting, which is really cool. This is pattern 41. You can find a full guide on it. I made a full video about this skin, and definitely my favorite. Oh, and I did forget to mention, you can see at the back, there's like a golden grenade as well. There is rare patterns where the golden grenade is in the middle of the gun. You can also check, the guide for those patterns as well. Next up, we have the M4 Daybreak. Now, this skin has the centered sun pattern, where you can see on pattern 18, where the sun is directly in the middle of the gun, and all of the rays are coming out, from the middle towards the edges of the gun. There is some patterns where the sun is in the top left or the top right. It really comes down to your preference. Most people consider the centered sun to be the best pattern, but like I said before, you can kind of pick whichever one, and there's a ton of patterns that have basically every position of the sun. Centered, top left, top right, whatever. Make your pick. It's going to be pretty much market. You're not going to have to overpay a ton for this pattern specifically. All right, next up, in my opinion, the Galil AR Phoenix Blacklight is the best rare pattern in the game, okay? The difference it makes between normal patterns and this one is tremendous. Instead of like full purple with a bunch of graffiti, you get the Phoenix in the middle of the gun, perfect position, and it looks phenomenal. I almost consider it like the Howl version of the Galil, but instead it's purple. It looks so good. And there's one small issue with pattern 755. It is literally like over $1,000 in factory new. It is absurdly expensive. I understand why there's not that many, and it's a tremendous upgrade over the general patterns, but my god, bro, people have this listed for like $2,000, and I think that is just obscene. Okay, I'm not paying $2,000 for a Galil, I'm sorry, but the pattern itself, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Next up, we have the Galil Caution, and this is the Falling Man pattern, where you can see on the back of the gun, near the stock, there's a little falling guy at the back over the little hole. You can get him on the handle, the stock, occasionally on the mag. You cannot get him on the main top part of the gun, the way the pattern sheet is laid out. But niche pattern, really cool, and not a lot of people know about this one either. Alright, just quickly showing you guys Galil AR pattern 763 100% fade. You got the burnt orange, the burnt yellow, and then green towards the front of the gun. Very basic. Next up, we have the Galil Sandstorm, and there's two distinct rare patterns. We have the Max White and Max Purple. This is Max White, this is pattern 555, and as you can see, tan handguard, and then full white on the stock, the body of the gun, the racking handle. Pretty much most of the gun is covered in white. Now the other rare pattern, Max Purple, in my opinion looks phenomenal. This is pattern 583. There's like 2 to 3 patterns that have like basically the whole gun covered in purple. It looks really nice. It's got like a matte purple color to it. Very nice for crafting. Massive difference between, you know, your stock patterns, and this one definitely requires overpay as well as the max white patterns. You don't necessarily have to find, you know, the #1 best pattern. You can always find like a couple patterns below it that look pretty good but don't require enormous overpay. Next up we have the SSG Acid Fade, which works very similar to the Amber Fade and the Fade pattern skins. Here we have 80% fade and then 100. So the 80% fades are, they call them quote-unquote black pearl patterns, where you see the entire body is full black. This is pattern 230. It is 80% on the dot. It is the lowest fade that you can get, and it looks pretty good. You keep the lime on the actual scope, but the whole body turns this like, you know, dark black color. And the opposite of that is pattern 575. It's the 100% fade, which is way more vibrant. You get the orange towards the back, the lime green, the dark green. It looks, if you want the most vibrant acid fade SSG, go for pattern 575 100% fade. It looks really nice. It's, you know, 2 polar opposites. It really comes down to your preference, and once again, there's a gazillion of these skins, so it's super easy to get the #1 best pattern. Alright, and the final skin of our video is going to be the AUG Snake Pit pattern 494, which is the frog pattern. As you see, some rare patterns have a frog appear. The best position is going to be 494, where he's pretty much towards the front of the gun up top. You see him when you shoot the gun in game. You see him when you inspect. People like to put a little froggy hat on him, which looks very cute, but that's pretty much it. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like. If you guys like listening to me yap, consider, you know, liking the video. You know, I tried to be as informative as possible. Next video, we're going to cover all of the rare knife patterns, and then after that, I'm going to cover all of the unofficial rare patterns. For example, all the meme ones like the hamster, the Mario, the Among Us, all of that stuff I'll cover in a separate video where there's no like official quote-unquote #1 pattern. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope, you know, you guys found this video helpful, and I'll see you guys probably tomorrow for the rare knife pattern video. Have a great day, guys. Peace.